The Prime Minister is resisting pressure to lift defence spending, despite just yesterday the White House calling on allies, including Australia in the Indo-Pacific, to step up. Joining me now is the Shadow Cabinet Secretary Andrew Wallace. Andrew, thanks for your time tonight. Defence spending's been one of the big domestic political issues this week. The coalition in the election pledged to lift spending to 3% of GDP. That's still the plan now. But the US is asking for 3.5%. So even under the coalition, wouldn't Australia still risk the ire of Donald Trump?
I think the US would be very, very pleased if Anthony Albanese was to match the coalition's policy of 3% spend of GDP on defence. At the moment, it is at 2%, with a hope that it might lift to 2.3% over the next decade or so. So Labor are absolutely not in a position where they are matching our NATO colleagues, our NATO allies that have now committed to 5% of GDP, 3.5% on hard defence expenditure and another 1.5% on infrastructure, defence infrastructure. So that is a very, very significant leap from where they are right now. Many NATO countries are spending around 2%. So to commit to 5% is something that the US have indicated that they want to see. In the last election, Trudy, we committed to lifting our defence expenditure from 2% to 2.5% in 5 years and then 3% in 10. So it would certainly be moving in the right direction. But, you know, Anthony Albanese knows better. He knows better than all of our NATO allies. He knows better than our most important security partner, the US. He thinks that, you know, we don't need to put what he calls an arbitrary figure on defence expenditure. He knows better than all of our other allies around the world because, well, I look, for the life of me, I can't understand where he's coming from. I know that the Labor Party are absolutely opposed to defence expenditure because we know that the left, where the Prime Minister comes from, doesn't want to see or invest in defence. They never have and they never will.
But one of the holes that was evident during the campaign was the coalition put out that arbitrary figure, but Peter Dutton, the then leader, couldn't really point to materially what was going to be purchased to get to that number. Do you concede in hindsight that was a mistake, that over the next 3 years the coalition should be putting forward, well, these are the key things we actually need to spend to get to that target?
Well, I don't accept that it's an arbitrary figure. And what we've seen just during the week from our NATO allies is exactly that. They've put a figure on defence expenditure. So it's not something that no one else in the world is doing. It's what the world is absolutely moving toward. And in fact, Australia, along with countries like Spain, seem to be the only Western countries that don't want to lift their defence expenditure. You know, we went to the last election with very concrete proposals to have a fourth squadron of F-35 strikers, fighters, for example. I don't accept that there were no concrete proposals, because there absolutely was. And the Prime Minister is very keen to set what he calls arbitrary figures on things like net zero, on carbon emissions, but he's not prepared to do it on defence. So he can't have it both ways.
Well, on another matter, on your side of politics this week, we saw the opposition leader, Susan Lee, addressing the National Press Club. She says she wants to be a zealot to getting more women into the Liberal ranks. She opened the door, it seems to me, to quotas for women, saying that would be up to Liberal branches. It's certainly opened a can of worms as to whether people support this in the party. Tony Abbott and Angus Taylor making it clear they don't. Where do you sit on quotas?
Well, I come from the great state of Queensland, Trudy, and Queensland, the LNP has always sort of pushed back against the concept of quotas, and I'm instinctively against quotas. I think that we need to have the best person for the job. Now, having said that, I think we need to absolutely increase our number of women in the parliament. We're at a very, very low point right now. But we don't need to reinvent the wheel here, because we can look at things like what, say, David Crucifulli did in the last Queensland state election, where he significantly increased the number of women in the Queensland Parliament without having formal quotas, without having quotas for women. So Susan is absolutely right. It is up to the state divisions as to whether they want to implement quotas or not, or some other form of hybrid system. It's up to the state divisions. Just as in every other state, Queensland will formulate a position on that. But certainly my reading of the LNP is that they're probably unlikely to introduce quotas. But hey, we're in uncharted territory right now. We have just had an absolute shellacking at the last federal election, and I think at the end of the day, everything has to be on the table. We need to examine all options in relation to our policies and our structures, and that's what we're doing right now. Everything needs to be on the table. We've got to be able to provide a viable alternative. Australians expect us as an opposition to be a credible opposition, and in order to be a credible opposition, we've got to have the best people in the park, and we need to have more women in the parliament. I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
Yeah, to watch this space, it seems, as to whether some state divisions go down this path. I want to talk about the social media ban that's going to come in for under 16s at the end of the year. If we've still got you there, Andrew.
I'm still here, but there
you go. We've lost your picture.
I'm still here. Just hang on 2 seconds.
Just as we talk about big tech, what are the
hang on?
What are the chances of that?
Bear with me. We'll try this.
Let's just. I can hear you now. I just want to talk about the social media ban. That's okay. You were the chair of this committee in the last parliament. I know this is an issue close to your heart about how do you actually have this age verification technology to ensure this happens. We saw this week a fight between YouTube and the eSafety Commissioner about whether YouTube should have been given an exemption. It seems clear the new Minister Anthony Albanese will not give them an exemption like the former Minister Michelle Rowland was planning to. Do you think YouTube should be included or excluded from the ban?
Look, the evidence that we had in the committee really wasn't pointing to significant issues around YouTube. It was very much centred around the likes of TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, but at the end of the day, I do respect. Hopefully, I'm back. I do respect Julie Inman-Grant. I think she's a very good e-safety commissioner. She is telling us that the evidence is saying, I think the figure that she quoted was 37% of the complaints that her office receives were in relation to complaints around YouTube. Now, that's something that we absolutely need to listen to. We need to be aware of that. I mean, the difficulty is that YouTube is almost ubiquitous in our society, and YouTube is used by. I use it a lot. If I'm out in the shed and I'm trying to figure out how to do something and I don't know how to do it, I'll YouTube it. So many Australians are now using it, and including kids. So. Whether there's some way that we can have a YouTube for kids or what, that's something that YouTube will need to work out. But if Julie Inman-Grant's telling us that 37% of the complaints that her office receives are as a result of YouTube, legislators like me need to stand up and take notice.
Yeah, we're waiting a decision from the new Minister Anthony Albanese in the next week or so, I'm told, as to whether they will actually exclude YouTube. Shadow Cabinet Secretary Andrew Wallace, I appreciate your time on this Saturday night.
Sorry about the camera, Tree.
That's okay.